Today is Friday, October 25th, 2024. This is Wes-tone here looking at the chart of Kaspa. Shout out to Crypto Proselyte and Miko Geno with Plan K for sharing excellent content about Kaspa's power law. There are some questions about the integrity of Kaspa's power law at this particular moment, because for the first time since basically we started receiving data on Kaspa, we are sort of below the lower band of the rainbow chart, currently sitting at about 12.5 cents, which is lower than most people are comfortable with, but I think I've identified, the power law, that little bit of a move isn't going to negate the power law. And just wanted to show you some of the cycles on Kaspa that I think I've identified, which are telling me to remain confident in Kaspa's cycles. So we'll just start by looking at Kaspa. Here's just a raw weekly chart of Kaspa. And we'll put on the Kaspa power law bands, which actually only work on the daily chart, so I'll switch to the daily chart. And it looks like we've held this bottom line pretty well all the way along until about now. Looks like we've broken through it. Let's extend those power law lines out a little bit, which I've done manually. I'm going to remove this power law line and switch back to the weekly chart. So we've only got data going back to May 30th of 2022. Some people will say that we don't have enough data to have confidence in Kaspa's power law, but we do have 2 orders of magnitude of data. We went from, even if we don't count this little bit here, we have, from 0.0015 all the way up to 0.15. So we have a lot of data. 2 orders of magnitude is probably, I don't know, this is just my opinion, probably the minimum amount we would need to have confidence in the power law. People are saying the power law is breaking. Let's just take like a short-term moving average, and actually let's just switch here. I manually drew in these curves based on the price data. This is high frequency data. I'm mapping out these trends manually as closely as I can. I'm going to get rid of the price data so we can see what that looks like. And then I'm going to add the low frequency cycles, which during its early stages doesn't really have any low frequency cycles because we haven't really had very much time to develop them. The first hint of a low frequency cycle is this recent move that we've had was a little bit overextended, and we can actually see that if we remove those and switch to, I think this tends to show it here. You can see the relationship between this moving average, how it follows the power law curves pretty well, and then it kind of gets a little bit overdone. How the moving average extends above this lower support band, and now it's coming back down below. So this tells me that maybe there's a little bit of a low frequency bump there. Get rid of that and switch back to my other view. So I kind of just drew that in manually. The red line is low frequency. The color of red is a low frequency wavelength. Blue is a high frequency light wavelength. So I drew that bump in there. Notice how the low frequency averages out the high frequency. So you can see how the high frequency goes above and below that low frequency line. So we've got a little bit of a low frequency cycle starting here, and now we've actually kind of extended on the low side. On the downside of that low frequency cycle, but My other cryptocurrency charts, particularly the others Bitcoin chart, shows me that we're at a bottom in the altcoin market relative to Bitcoin, and that we can anticipate an altcoin market peak around next year. So that corroborates with this as well. This you could consider an altcoin, and this cycle here, notice how it's starting to develop a greater amplitude as time goes on. Right now we are sitting here, and I'm anticipating some sort of peak in the spring, followed by a summer lull of some kind, followed by the main peak in the fall of next year, sometime around 12 months from now. And that would correspond with the Bitcoin market cycle peak. So it actually can help here to draw in the Bitcoin market cycles. Just as far as timing, this is just timing, not price. But you can see we had a Bitcoin market cycle low here around summer of 2023. Right now we're about halfway up the Bitcoin market cycle, and that Bitcoin cycle peak harmonizes with the low frequency peak of our Kaspa chart. So I think what's happening here is, as Kaspa is maturing, it's going to start to resonate and synchronize with the Bitcoin market cycles. I think it can do that while also maintaining its own power law, because you can see here, if we anticipate a Bitcoin market cycle low in, let's say, summer of 2027, that can also correspond with a similar Kaspa low, even though Kaspa may outperform other altcoins during that low, because it looks like there's just not a lot of room for Kaspa to it's probably going to hug that lower trend line here during that time. But I think these low frequency wavelengths are starting to harmonize with the Bitcoin market cycle, and the Bitcoin market cycle is what drives the entire altcoin market cycle. Kaspa being different in that it has the strongest R-squared coefficient of determination out of any other altcoin. So Bitcoin and Kaspa are the only two that follow a 95% R-squared. So right now, at the moment, we are seeing a convergence of a low in the low frequency cycle and a low in the high frequency cycle, as well as a low in the altcoin general broader market cycle. That's why I think we have these convergence of frequencies, which is what's causing the actual Kaspa price to break that lower trend line. But I think within a month or month and a half, we'll have rounded that bottom, and we should blast back up to the upper trend line. Now, another way of looking at this is thinking of this in terms of phase. So we had this giant move. Well, you can see here, first of all, we have a very high frequency bunch of cycles from low to peak, but they're starting to elongate. You can see how they're getting longer, right? So this move was our longest, one of our biggest peaks yet, from this low to this high. And you would expect that when we hit this upper resistance line that we would come back down to the lower support line, and we didn't really do that. So one way to think about this is that I just draw this in here. Right, we had this move here. This move should have actually come down to the lower trend line. Instead, it did the opposite. So this blue line is what we should have done. Instead, we did this. And so now we're essentially 180 degrees out of phase with the actual market cycle versus the ideal market cycle. And so when you have two waveforms that are 180 degrees out of phase, you basically have a null, or in this case, sideways price action. And so what should have happened was we should have gone down, and then we also should have this peak then should have theoretically gone up to the upper band, but we didn't, since we started to become out of phase. That took the energy, the amplitude out of this move and just kind of nulled it. So now we're just kind of drifting sideways. But now if we take this cycle, theoretically we should be at another market low here. But since we're kind of at a null, right, we've just broken the trend line. But take that out a little bit further in time, and we should, theoretically see something like this. So now after we round this bottom, we've got a very strong wave, a very strong cycle that is going to yank us up a lot higher than we are now. So I think the lowest we might see here is maybe 10 cents. If we break 10 cents, I will be ending my trade here, because we're right at a convergence of cycles right here. So we could definitely break this, but I don't think we go below 10 cents. 10 cents, I'll be buying more. If we break below that significantly, then I'm just going to have to be done. But that's my trade set up there. I think we could see somewhere around $1 in the spring of 2025, followed by some kind of quick correction. I just don't think we're going to see a full correction all the way down to the lower trend line, because we're at a broader market cycle peak here throughout the entirety of 2025. But so far the pattern this cycle has been summer lulls, summer sideways action. So if that pattern continues to hold, then I think we see this peak to about $1 in Kaspa and pull back to approximately 75 cents. Don't really know. It depends on how this plays out. But then another peak up to about $2, at which case I will be selling most of my Kaspa. I may try to take a trade here in the spring if it plays out in such a fashion. But for sure by fall, I'll be pretty much dumping my entire load in order to hopefully buy back sub $1 a year later, and then hold for the longer term. And I did mention earlier, I'll just show you this. I did mention earlier the others Bitcoin chart. So this chart just demonstrates the altcoin market cycle bottom that we're in relative to Bitcoin. So we're at an extreme here. Our price is diverging significantly from the cycle trend, which means we're going to see a pretty aggressive move to the upside. This just shows you a convergence here of the altcoin bottom relative to Bitcoin. And so we'll check in another time and see how this is going. But that's my take on the Kaspa break of the lower trend line. We just have a convergence of cycles, and rather than keep on rambling, I think I've said what I wanted to say. So thanks.